So I'm going to start introducing the next presenter, whom is a dear friend of mine, Mairam Durand. And well, I could say about her that she's a truth seeker, a honest truth seeker that has somehow transited the path from the honest scientific doubt and thought to being a seeker of truth, of the living truth, and allowing somehow spiritual insight and discernment to come to her life. She's going to introduce us the topic of the true believer. And indeed, she can say a lot about that because she has transited that path experientially. Thank you, Mairam.
Pero como cualquiera de nosotros,
just like any of us, we all ask ourselves the same question when we begin. What does it mean to be a believer? Well, that he who believes, or she who believes, especially who professes a determined religious faith. Those are the concepts that are shown to us in our academic environments. However, it generates another question. What does it mean to believe? Well, we are told that first of all, it's to consider to accept one thing as true without actually having any irrefutable proof of it. That means something that is but is not. Two, consider something to be true or certain. Even more difficult to have that concept. And three, having trust in someone or something. Well, personally speaking, the existence of God, for me, has two ways of looking at it. The first is family belief. What does that mean? In my personal case, my father was Catholic, Apostolic Catholic Roman Church. My mother was a believer in saints. My grandparents were completely metaphysical. My other grandparents believed in one way or another that nothing existed. As you can understand, in my family life, we had certain levels of confusion, and that was the case during my whole experience and my growth as a teenager until I reached university. However, there was an interesting factor there. They always asked me to prove that things existed. Another way to understand the existence of God is by personal experimentation. And what do I want to say with this? We don't have to fall ourselves and fall and back up, etc., to experiment in order to know if God exists or does not exist. So therefore, in my personal case, I began with curiosities by seeking out what was God. Did he exist or not? Because there was a great deal of confusion. Then I decided to study medicine. So therefore, every time things became more and more affirmed, the contemplation of nature reveals only the God of nature, a God of movement. But I want to tell you something. Do you know how many bones we have in our body? We're born with 300, and we end up with 206 bones in our bodies. Do you know how many genes we have? Approximately 30,000. But every year, they discover new genes. Do you know how many hairs do we have on our head? 250 per square centimeter. And this is something very interesting. Do you know how many neurons we have? From 66,000 to 87,000 million neurons. So you can't deny this fascinating discovery of discovering the material nature of things. And that's where I began my journey. So why? Why? Why does all of this exist? These curiosities, apparent curiosities. Why are we perfectly perfect like the human body is perfect? Nature exhibits only matter, movement, energy, under certain conditions, obviously. But nature provides the basis for logical belief in survival of the human. It does not. It's what it is. I have what I have. And as a very simple analogy, we used to say that I lacked and I had that episemia. What does the episemia mean? That ascepticism that we have. Uh, God exists due to nature. Is nature God? So we begin to research more and more, investigate the marvels that exist on our planet about material things. However, any human being with two fingers in front of their head, they would think this can't be simply about nature itself. Who created all of this? There has to be something that exists. So when we try to clarify the world's realities and the spiritual realities in these physical minds, there appears a mystery. And the mystery, what is mystery? Well, it's subtleness, such profound subtleness. And as we can say, this can't just be the case. This can't be it. And that discernment, that understanding is something that is called faith that knows God. And I don't know what that is, but that's where we begin our journey. But what is faith? What is that preponderating factor to understand that we have how a way to understand these mysteries? And we can achieve this comprehension by understanding and recognizing the infinite by the finite, the discernment of the eternal God. So therefore, the reasons by which we study science can conduce us through nature and take us back to the first cause. So that means that something was created and someone created, but it's via that religious faith that we truly need in order to transform that first cause in science into something that saves us. That's why revelation is needed to validate our faith in our discernment. The religious man, that let me confess something, already believes in God. If not, it makes no sense to be a religious man. But there are two basic reasons to believe in God that exist that promote human survival. And what does this mean? If this is the planet and if this is matter and this is the procedure that I have to understand things, are you telling me then that there is something that comes after? That there's something that I don't see but is there? And that is called survival? Survival. So I am transferred from where I am to something further that I'll have another life. Wow, I said, this changes things. So therefore, I realized that one factor, one basic reason to believe in God in that survival is experimentation and the personal certainty, the hope and the trust that in no way this is registered or initiated. These are registered. This is the thought adjuster, which is actually truly allowing us to understand a series of things that come to us. Understanding this point, why something that comes after exists, for what reason, and a second reason to believe in God that provides human survival is the revelation of truth via the personal ministry of the Spirit of Truth, due to the self-bestowal of divine sons, or through written revelations of the word. In my personal case, it was via the revelation of the written word that I understood this. And it's via the revelation that it gives us the sense of the evolutionary obligations that are to come. And it's that illumination of revelation that produces such a deep impression on the moral nature of God that at the end it reaches his mind like its soul to conclude, who am I to not to dare not to believe in God? Who am I? It's totally something, it's like a hit to our head, to that reasoning that we have had, to our mind. That's why it's super important when we understand. It took me close to 40 years. Even I took a sabbatical year, and in that sabbatical year, I went to the Catholic Church, which I had grown up in. As I told you, I have two uncles that have been cardinals of the Catholic Church. Imagine their religious convictions. Then I went through the Quran, the Torah. I went to the Baha'i faiths. I studied a great deal of metaphysics. I try to find many things, and via the revelation is where I finally felt truly that understanding of survival. There's nothing else that exists for me. For me, it was something eye opener. It changed my vision 360 degrees completely. But, well, here's the question that we have: what is faith? Okay, this is what you believe. But why do you believe? And why is everything concreted via faith? But tell me, what is faith then? Faith tells us, or the dictionary says, that is to affirmation that something is certainty, and the dictionary also says that it's manifested above needs to possess evidence that demonstrates truth. It's above the demonstration of truth. Wow. And for me, that still is not so comprehensible. So therefore, there I discovered that the belief arrives to the level of faith when it motivates you in life, and it motivates the way of living, because faith is a living attribute of the religious experience, textually, genuinely personal. It's genuine. And very personally speaking, I came to this conclusion that in many aspects, belief is an interior act of a mental recognition and intellectual recognition, while faith is the belief in action. Both are necessary. One sets the seed so that the other produces our reaction through faith before the God in which we believe. I wanted to tell you something very interesting. The acceptance of a teaching as true is not faith. It's simply a belief. It's faith is not all. The certainty is in the conviction is not faith either. So, what is faith? What have we learned about it when our life dares to challenge each recurring episode of existence, when it faces that spectacle of what we're living in this planet right now with limiting the human limitations? We all know what's happening, but what are we going to do? We can change it. We have to do it. Science cannot. We truly feel and we're capable of declaring, even though I cannot do this, in me there lives someone that can and that will. And that is victory that the world brings to us. That is our faith. Faith never escapes the duty to solve mortal problems. So let's not tell ourselves, since I have faith, then I'm just going to go to my comfort zone and let the problems get fixed by themselves. That's not the way. It's also not the case that since living faith does not promote fanaticism, careful here, sometimes we hit ourselves and we feel like we have a moral authority to say, hey, this is not this is not faith. Forgive me? Who am I to say to my brother that something is not faith? And who am I to believe that that which is not what I think, a certain fanaticism, maybe faith or not? Persecution and intolerance is not faith. Man believes in a God that promotes survival, the Father which is in heaven, the God of love. A fixed belief frees. Belief fixes things, faith liberates. Beliefs can become possessions of a group, but faith will always be personal. God is as real and absolute, is so real and absolute that you cannot ask for proof, nor can you demonstrate a miracle to demonstrate his existence, to affirm that it is real.
A la tierra que no es real. Y siempre lo conoceremos porque confiamos en Él. Y creemos en Él.
Conheceremos porque confiamos nele, por nossa participação diária, pela participação pessoal,
Lo más
Participation, which is the most important thing. It's the day-to-day living that we have, where we acquire our knowledge about him and where we start to realize about what it means to have faith. And with this, I wanted to also touch upon a very important point. When situations are difficult in our lives, we recur to God. We come to God. If there's an earthquake, we all run to God. Oh my God, please, may the house not fall on top of me. I live in a very precarious condition and the house may fall. My God, please, God never heard me, because what's happening here is that God is punishing me. So due to punishment, I have to, in one way or another, go to church. And I have to hit myself in the back, and I have to begin to sit down and say, forgive me, God, for my behavior. That is that faith? Is that what is truly being asked of us? Is that what we're truly learning? No. I learned that in one way or another, faith means to act. It's living. It means that I know via revelation what is correct and what I have to do, what I can do, what is available for me to do. But faith is what tells me, do, act. Everyone tells you it's marvelous, do the truth, beauty, and goodness. Can somebody tell me what does that mean? It's way too extreme. But if I begin to understand that to love means, in this particular moment, in these difficult situations in life, it means to know if my neighbor is older and they don't have children, or they have children but they don't come to see them, I could knock on his door and say, do you need something from me? Or is this in one way or another that I know that that person that is there doesn't have food for today because I got the information. So I say, well, everybody via their own effort and beyond their own sweat and from their forehead, they have to fend for themselves. Is that going to make me more of a millionaire? Nobody is so rich to not need, nor too poor to not have needs. That made me understand what faith actually meant. It means to act, it means to live, it means today, the present. That is what real faith is. That is what it truly means to believe in the things that we are doing every single day and that we have to do. Because before, I was an ignorant person. I had no idea about this revelation, and today I know it. Therefore, I have the obligation, the duty to try to be a better person every single day. Not perfect. Obviously, I have many sins that I have in my life, and I can't be perfect. And some I may still commit. But what I do know is that every day we have the duty to make a change. Let's not wait for tomorrow. Let's not wait for some virus to come and tell us, hey, look at how fragile are you. Look at what's happening. I continue to insist, act today in the present. That's what I learned. I learned that faith is with me every single day, and that every time I wake up, I say, God, thank you for my life. Because not only because I'm a fighter, or because I have high pressure, or because I'm a diabetic, or because I have a serious comorbidity and difference. However, I'm still alive. And that is the point. I have to thank God for this. If I, physically speaking, here, if I talk about my personal faith here, physically speaking, I know perfectly well that I'm diabetic, hypertense, I have back problems, I have a great deal of problems. I shouldn't even exist, theoretically speaking. So therefore, why do I exist? because I have to have a purpose. And I think that that is why we're here. The revelation allows me to understand that the day to day is the most important. It's not long-term plans. It's today. I can make a general plan about what I want to do, yes, but today, here, now, that is my conduct. Before all of these things that are happening throughout the world, I ask myself and I ask myself, what do I do? What can I do? So therefore, I remember quite about that in my search, in my path, in different places, there was a principle that said, when your force is greater to you, then that is faith. Sit down, please rest and observe. People are speaking. Uh, please let the wave go by. And when the wave already came, come back with your resolution. Do things that you have to do because that is very important. So, who is the true believer? Now let's answer that question. What I was able to understand and I understood very clearly via the revelation is he who knows truth does not save it for himself. He gives it to his brother. But the true believer acts always, but never forces anyone. And all of us that are here know what we feel when we discovered the revelation. We wanted to tell it to everyone, to our family, to my dad, my grandpa, my uncle, to everyone, because we felt that it was an enormous pleasure, rejoice, a personal happiness. We wanted everybody to believe what we just discovered, what we had seen. In my personal case, I had discovered something. And that works that way. In life, we start to realize that if they ask you, you answer. And if they continue to ask you, then that means that they have the capacity to listen, so speak. But we can never force things because the first thing that we're going to feel is the law of physics. Physical laws. Bam! People will actually be repelled. The true believer has to think further than this world's materialness and then the realities. Yes, obviously, yes, I've thought many times when I end this, which is not going to be in too long of a point. I'm almost close to my end, but I wanted to go to the mansion worlds. But I would love if they give us via democracy for one reason, if they allow us to have a personal experience, I would love to work with life carriers. I would love to work with life carriers. I would like to join that corps. That's something that fascinates me. I believe that. And in one way or another, I know we're going to have opportunities. The true believer, gentlemen and ladies, has a purpose. That means to actually work with the fruits of the spirit, but not simply having doing one thing or another or having the strength to do things. No, it's by loving man how he has loved us and how God has loved him as well. In that way, it's he, the Father, feeling that love that we have for him and feeling that love that he has for us by conviction. The true believer does not think a lot about the future punishment of sin. What are we going to do, gentlemen, if we already made a mistake? What are we going to do now? Well, are we going to hit ourselves forever? Are we going to punish ourselves eternally? Or are we going to say, oh my God, they're going to throw us into sulfur. We're going to do bad. Just because of we're worried. No, the only thing that should worry us is our separation with God. Why? Because simply we continue to commit the same errors and continue to commit the same errors and commit the same errors and commit the same errors. That should worry us. But man is the only animal to fall down 3 times on the same rock. In my case, I had to fall 5 times on the same rock, unfortunately, but that's my reality. Okay? The true believer is immune to depression, to fear, to all cataclysms that are purely material that happen to us. Because those who live in the spirit are not perturbed never by material world episodes. It doesn't mean that we have to protect ourselves from an earthquake, nor that we have to try to understand security if there's a storm coming. It means that we do not have to be in that depression. What am I going to do tomorrow? I don't know how I'm going to survive. Gentlemen, that I am a living proof that due to situations that have happened to me, I did not have financial resources at one time. None. There had no possibilities at a given moment. My fathers died a long time ago. My brothers don't live in Peru. And so what am I going to do now? I already knew about the revelation at the time. And I sat down one day and I said, Dad, because I call him Pa. I call Pa. I call him Pa. I call God Pa. I said, I don't know what is the path that I should take, but I have done and I will continue. I'm not sure what I'm going to eat today. I'm not sure how I'm going to pay my rent. I'm not sure what I'm going to do today. And I remember very clearly that I took a taxi one day and the taxi driver told me, have you realized, young lady, that the Father provides for us every day? And I heard him, God, what? Yes, look at this. Today, I didn't have any work. They lent me this taxi, and at noon, I'm already making approximately $40 worth of, and I've never been a chauffeur in the past. And I started to think, and this man made me understand, why was I getting so worried? I have to have the effort to sow the seeds, because the biggest fear that we all have is before we get to an average age. Our biggest fear is always economic to most of us. What am I going to do to survive? But when we have certain years, like me now, when we get certain ages where we're all close to the end of our cycle, then we don't care about that money that longer. We're asking ourselves, what's going to happen? I'm going to leave this world, and what? How am I going to talk to the Father? What did I do with my life? What did I do? Did I contribute? Did I work? Did I help? That's the question that we would have to ask ourselves every single day. Every day that we live, that a true believer lives, it's easier to do the right thing. There are no longer excuses to continue to make the same mistakes, those small little sins, more and more sins and more sins. It becomes more difficult because at this particular moment when we're going to be imprudent, for example, I'm a bit temper, and I remember when something went wrong. This is not good. Look, I used to get very angry very quickly. And today I've been able to look at myself and try not to get so angry. Look at myself first and say, what am I doing right now? Why are you getting angry? Are you going to change things? No. So, okay. That is not correct to complain, to become bad humored. No, I'm not damaging anybody else. And I shouldn't damage myself or hurt myself or nobody else. And I have learned through time to be more tolerant. I never thought that I could overcome that, but we have little by little. Finally, gentlemen, I wanted to end with this quote. It is literally true that we have to know human things to be able to love them. That is a fact. Nobody loves what they don't know. Our friend David, that loved to travel to Peru, have the complete certainty, David, that you will love it, that you will see it soon. However, divine things should be loved to be able to be known. This is making us more vibrant in our frequencies with our fathers. I do believe in energy. I absolutely believe in the energy of the Father, and every single thing is simply a matter of becoming awake, attentive, of being in the here, in the now. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Mairam. Tenemos algunas preguntas.
Thank you very much, Maida. We have several questions. For example, on our Facebook page, we have questions.
To mention it in English. It is from Michael Miniham, and it says, is there anything in the Urantia book about the present time pandemics? ¿Hay algo en el libro de Urantia acerca de la pandemia?
Does the Urantia book speak anything about this current times pandemic?
Si haya,
Well, the question is if there's currently anything in the Urantia book that talks about these types of situations that we're living in. Is that what you're referring to? Yes, of course, yes. For example, look at these paragraphs that I told you about. That all of this uncertainty that appears in life, all of these situations that we are living in that are stable, all of those things, I continue to think that all of this are tests, are trials. How strong are we? How strong are we? How capable are we to face ourselves with adversity? It's meant to grow. You won't grow at home drinking a margarita, going to the beach and taking the sun. No. We grow in different situations, in those challenges that life brings in order to jump those hoops. Or sometimes we don't jump them. Sometimes we have to go around them. And that is the point.
Perdón, ¿me permiten?
Forgive me. Lourdes, can you allow me to ask a question?
Soy Efraín Vivanco de Ecuador. ¿Sí? En primer lugar, quiero saludarles a todos y es una oportunidad estas conferencias para conocerles a todos los hermanos de diferentes partes del mundo. En segundo lugar, quiero agradecer al Perú, Mairam, por esta charla tan bonita, ¿sí? sobre la fe. Solamente quiero hacer no es una pregunta, una pequeña aportación. Recordar que nuestro mundo, así como estamos en la pandemia, es una escuela, es una prueba.
É uma escola, né? Uma prova.
Esperamos que toda la humanidad aprendamos algo de este mal que nos ha llegado a la humanidad, ¿no? Porque esta es una escuela en la que tenemos que graduarnos, ¿sí? Y también quiero recordar o quiero decir que todos los seres humanos, no creo que haya un ser humano que no haya cometido un error.
I don't think there's no, sorry, I was in the wrong channel, people. All of us sometimes fall on the same rock. And sometimes our errors that we've committed do not allow us to live in the present. They actually do not allow us to overcome things, and we're not able to forget things. But the revelation in the Urantia book reminds us that errors that we can never forget here will be forgotten in eternity. So that gives us the hope that when we're there in the mansion worlds, we won't remember the bad things and the errors that we've committed and those that made us suffer. Thank you. Well, thank you, Efrain. I just simply wanted to contribute something in my search. I remember one time that I said, I think it's unfair that trying to do things correctly, there are other people that steal, that kidnap, that kill. How unjust. And they're going to die as well and they will be saved? It doesn't seem fair to me, in my mind at least. In my mind, I couldn't understand these things. And one day that I was actually reading in the book, I find a small paragraph. Forgive me, all of you, but I have never been capable to remember the pages or the numbers or the quotes or where it is in the book, but I know I read it in the book. And I read something like this. I'm paraphrasing in my own paraphrase. What do you care? What do you mean, what do you care? What do you care? You're not, you worry about yourself, about being better yourselves, of doing things yourself much better, to not commit your own mistakes. What should you care if that other person is making others suffer? You don't know what happened to him in the past to get to that point, that he's a thief or a delinquent or whatever, or a bad person. You know what happens? Do you know what his life is like? Do you know what his mind is thinking? You don't know that. What do you care? You should care about yourself. How better can you be today yourself and not commit those same mistakes yourself? And understanding, we're not talking about we're trying to understand. We're not trying to just say that justify him. He may not have had the same opportunities as you. And that cost us quite a lot to understand.
Veo que me vas captando.
¿Hay alguna otra
Is
pregunta?
there any other question?
Guy, ¿tú querías preguntar algo?
Guy, you wanted to ask something?
Ay, perrón quiere.
Oh, I almost have a Spanish name.
Me gustaría preguntarte
I would
algo.
like to ask you something, Marian.
Mayra, hay una pregunta.
Marian, there's a question in the chat as well. It says that did your previous religious beliefs, out of all of those, what was more difficult to leave behind? Even though you may not believe it, it was more difficult to leave the belief in reincarnation. I used to firmly believe in reincarnation. I thought that solved all of my questions in the past. I believe that it's true that we evolved from one to another. It seemed that I was still missing, in theory, 7 lives more. And like the cat, well, in my last life, I would be the perfect person where I would be at the right hand of my father. And then I realized that that was not the case, that there is not 7 lives. And I realized that I had no idea what was going to happen, and that I had to be in the here and now and begin to do things now as they should be done. And that cost me quite a bit. And Lourdes is a witness that I used to have huge discussions with her, very strong discussions of saying, this cannot be true. I have had experiences, living experiences that I know that previous lives existed. She said, yes, but these are your genetic memories. You have genetic memories. That's what you think are reincarnations. When I discovered in science that there I understood that genetic memories, that cells actually have a memory. We have a genetic memory. No way. They have a memory. Your cells remember the past of your ancestors. If we actually wound ourselves or injure ourselves on our skin, why do you think that our skin regenerates itself? We don't mutate like the reptiles and we don't eliminate and have new skin. No, simply we regenerate and our cells reunite because our cells have memories. So we begin to see what can we do to regenerate our cells and to remove our injuries. That's as simple as that. It's an elemental, and that's what happens with human beings' lives. There is no such thing as reincarnation. That really cost me, however, but thank you for the question. Mairam. We have Guy wants to ask a question. Chris as well wanted to ask a question. Nubia Aldana wants to ask a question. And let's begin with Guy. They called you Guy. Sorry,
Okay.
guy.
Thank you. Well, I don't have a question. I have a comment. And I've heard about you through my friend, Lynn. And wow, I'm really impressed by your presentation. Congratulations. It's very dynamic.
Gracias.
And I don't know who translate if it's a reader, but he is doing a really good job. It's full of religious zeal, and we feel that spiritual strength. So I'm really grateful to you to address issues that we don't grow by sitting behind our computer and watching a TV show and eating food. We grow because we have challenge, and it's important to put ourselves in challenge. You know, as Agnes and I say, the supreme resolve problem. So if we don't like to resolve problem, then we're not really doing what the Father wants from us. So, you know, I want to share with you that it's really when you are with people that are not really lovable, or at least identify as that, and
for Agnes and I is when we did prison ministry that we really felt that the love of the Father was manifested through us to the other, because we were there just to love them and create a safe environment where they can talk and share. So thank you. I really appreciate your dynamic and your zeal. God bless you.
Gracias a ti.
Mairam, tenemos una
Thank
pregunta.
you. We have a question from Chris, then from Nubia.
If you mean Chris Wood, I do not have a question. I just wanted to point to Nubia.
Bueno, gracias.
Well,
Chris.
very good. Thank you, Chris, for giving me the word. Hi, Mairam. I love having heard you. I really agree with many of your thoughts, and your way of seeing life. I have a concern I want you to expand upon, because I think that I heard you say something related to that persecutions and intolerance is also faith. I coincide in part, but I wanted to see if I understood you correctly, or please elaborate.
Es lo que las persecuciones y la intolerancia no es fe.
Ajá.
No es fe. Coincidimos, Nubia, no es fe.
Mairam, hay una pregunta en chat de María Teresa Mendoza.
Como tampoco pues el fanatismo, ¿no?
And fanaticism is not faith, and persecutions are not faith. It doesn't. Yes, because in Colombia, for example, at this particular moment, I'm in Colombia. Here, precisely in Barranquilla, in the city where I live, we're going through a situation of fanaticism that people are evangelical and from certain sects. There's a certain sect, and they're actually outside waiting for the beginning of the Jesus Christ that's what's going to come on the 28th. And for 6 months they've been fasting, and people are very worried about them, but they've been brainwashed completely. They think that Jesus was coming on the 28th of January. And there's that debate of what is faith, and so other people are saying that it's not faith. So that really, for me, obviously that's something which is completely strange. But obviously you talked about intolerance, and obviously intolerance has a lot to do with confusions, and sometimes we have skewed minds, and sometimes we need more illumination. Thank you, Marian, for your talk. Excellent conference. Marian, we have a question by Maria Teresa Mendoza. If you don't have faith, how do you acquire it? Wow. That is a very good question. The problem is that we always believe that there exists, that there's a God. That's a fact. For example, in my personal path, I knew that there was a God because I already had scientific answers and clear answers that we could not have this be random, that nature itself by itself could not create itself randomly. There has to be something behind it. Architect, the designer, there had to be something. It was, and even with all of that, I started to realize I knew that God existed. However, did I have faith? I asked myself. I don't know. I believe that one of the most important things that allowed me, well, that the revelation gave me, was to find the path of understanding what faith actually is. That faith starts with the fact that not only does the Father see you when you ask him, because he always hears you out at every moment. He's always hearing you. It's not that. It's the feeling safe, of feeling certain that you are going to be sustained at the appropriate moment. For example, let me give you a simple example. Imagine that you are going up into those child games, those up and downs, those type of small roller coasters, but there's nobody there. But your father or your dad or your mom, that are the people that are closest to you, are below waiting for you. It's very high, the roller coaster. And they tell you, and then, or sometimes you're in a small part and they say, jump, daughter. And it got stuck and says, jump there. And you jump because it's your dad. It doesn't matter. And you come down at full speed, but you know down there, your mother's going to receive you, your father's going to receive you. For example, maybe this is too much of a simple example. That's how I learned about faith. you absolutely have a certainty that that father's going to be there for you and that mother could be there, and that apparent danger that could possibly happen to you is not bad because somebody's going to be there to save you. You understand that there is no bad that exists, that sometimes we have certain consequences of a cause, but sometimes these things just happen. So we have to understand, and we have to just take a step back and say, okay, I'm not going to allow myself this to actually affect me, because what is clear, and they repeat this permanently, and the revelators tell us this: when you allow yourself to be influenced by fear, by anguish, you're dead, because you get paralyzed. No longer can you act, and then you have more and more fear, anxiety, and that blocks you completely, and that blocks your action. So you have to learn to breathe, to move, to do other things. And you can't avoid these things. You have to rationalize, or at least in my personal case, I have to rationalize in my mind and say, okay, what can I learn from this? Okay. I simply ask you, Father, to show me the path, show me, teach me, what should I learn from this? And then I start to feel a peace of mind to face that situation that is so difficult. There are many things that are important. Your who is around you, who surrounds you, because if you live with people that are so negative, with people that simply think that this is a disgrace, all of this is terrible, tomorrow is the apocalypse and we're all going to die together, so let's pray, that's not going to help you at all. Things and people that are toxic, you have to be left behind. So you begin to have greater conviction that remember always the up and downs. You may be at a very high moment, 15, 20, 35 meters, and your father's down there saying, jump, my daughter, jump, don't worry about it. You'll jump. And that's what happens. That's the feeling that I personally wanted to have that makes me feel peace of mind. Mayra, there's a question from Facebook, and then Irma Aguilar has another. Well, the question from Facebook.
To what extent has the pandemic affected cultural evolution? Is the depopulation of the planet a cosmic intervention or an ordinary natural phenomenon? La repito, to what extent has the pandemic affected cultural evolution? Is the depopulation of the planet a cosmic intervention or an ordinarily natural phenomenon?
Yo creo que
Well, I believe that question, we've asked ourselves, the majority of us that are here have probably asked ourselves that same question. First of all, I think that culturally speaking, I wanted to explain something. When people say the new normality, I don't believe there's no such thing as new normality. I think normality is what we have to get accustomed to with all these changes. The more use of technology, being able to maintain us, because in my personal opinion, viruses have always existed. They've existed yesterday, today, and tomorrow. They're always been existed. If up to today, we don't have a vaccine for the cold, now explain to me, how in the hell are you going to be able to have a vaccine for this? And the same thing. And if not, it's not going to be COVID-19, it will be COVID-35. And then they're going to appear COVID-85. And we're going to have to learn to live with these things. But this does not have to destroy us as human beings. It has to allow us to face these things and come outside. And forgive me, but I'm telling you personally, I repeat this for the third time. I've had to learn. With Ceci, I had to learn 4 months back everything what this means. I had to learn technology. I had to start learning how to work with computers, networks. I had no idea how to use these tools in the past. And I had to relearn things. Either I advance or I become stancated. And there's going to be other people that'll stomp on you if you don't jump on board. There is no possibility not to progress. You can't just stay in a bubble. You have to continue, culturally speaking. And the other question is, I think that there exists This is a virus and this is a situation which is very earthly. This is very earthly, very physical in our planet. In one way or another, it had to happen today, tomorrow, at any moment, because the enormous crisis that we have had, we've abused from nature and we've abused from ourselves. We felt omniscient, omnipowerful, omnipotent. This had to have happened. And I think that we are here, this generation is here, and we've had to see things that are marvelous. Thankfully, we've had to see, forgive me, but stop watching TV and the radio and look at all this stuff. And we've had to see many good things, technology, internet, many beautiful things have happened as well. We're privileged today as human beings. We have lots of knowledge. We have a lot of different things available to us. But I also believe that in one way or another, there exists, because nothing exists randomly. Things exist because there's a true cause. We are the consequences of the things in our past. And I do believe that the spiritual beings and the special beings that are looking at us from above, because they've done this in the past, and they're always looking at us. I think they're looking down at us and seeing how we're going to evolve. But I also think that they're also telling us, hey, listen. Listen to what's happening. Look at what's happening. Are you getting far from your family? Are you communicating with your children? Do you love your parents? Do you know that you're not alone in this world and that money is not everything? And little by little, every message that we keep hearing, we start to realize that in one way or another, I am convinced that we have help from above. Just like the help exists, when we make a decision, a conscious decision to change something, it's like we've always spoken about the universe. The universe comes to an agreement so that things work. I don't know how it works. I don't really have a logical reason why the universe comes together to work, but it works. And when we make a decision, especially when we make a decision to help others, not an egoistic decision, but to help others, I don't know how, but the universe comes together. Somebody calls you here, things just start to work out. And it's not that there's a gift and every day I have a crystal ball and I look at it and see the future. No, things just work. I am convinced that each and every one of the things have a consequence. Mayra, we have 10 minutes left or less. There's a question by Irma Aguilar and then by Norma Caicedo. And with that, I think we have to end. And then we'll pass on to Lourdes' presentation.
Irma, su micrófono.
Irma, your microphone, please.
Irma no está. El micrófono para Norma Caicedo.
Oh, Irma's not here, so the microphone for Norma Caicedo. Oh, very good day. Mayra, I have a question for you, Mayra. Why do you believe that there are being so many deaths in the world? And official statistics and non-official statistics tell us that. Why do you think this pandemic has caused so much panic in mankind, even though the numbers, even with the numbers? I think one of the biggest problems, and I reiterate, is fear. Someone once said that sometimes these were the fruits of our sins and the results, the cause of our sins. When we commit sins, quote unquote sins, or maybe those small sins, medium sins, and the super sins, then there's something that exists that we have a conscious. Since this doesn't have any explanation and the conduct doesn't have an explanation, though we feel anguish and anxiety. Well, I think that in this particular moment, I remember very well in medicine that when I studied medicine that they said there was a dialogue between death and a doctor. And the doctor tells death, hey, don't you see, death, that so many people are dying in this pandemic? And death answers, no. I had only said that 500 people were going to die, but the other 5,000 that are dying of fear, not of the disease. But why is it my fault? The doctor said, because you're the one that's telling people that are going to die. So you're scaring them and you're not giving any type of hope or serenity. So people always think about fear.